begin Chapter 2, which is chemistry. It covers inorganic and organic chemistry. The organic chemistry is going to be a little bit more important to us. We are going to touch on some important inorganic chemistry pieces, but it's mainly going to be organic chemistry and how the human body works. So we're going to start out by explaining that the major elements of the human body are actually only 4 on the periodic table. Oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, they make up 96% of the mass. And if you put these together, you can make organic compounds, you can make inorganic compounds. And one of the things that you probably already know is we're mostly made up of water, so hydrogen and oxygen are 2 very important elements. And then carbon and hydrogen are really important when it comes to organic compounds. Review from basic chemistry. Ionic bonds. Ionic bonds are formed between atoms that are going to transfer their electrons to make some sort of compound. And covalent bonds are those that share their electrons and make molecules or compounds. Chemical reactions, you guys studied this in regular chemistry that you took either last year or the year before. And so the first chemical reaction that we'll talk about is called a combination reaction, or you probably know it as synthesis reaction, which is where we're taking 2 smaller pieces and producing a very large piece. We also call this anabolism in anatomy. Decomposition reactions are the opposite, where you are breaking molecules down into smaller pieces, and we also call this catabolism, which is all part of your metabolism. Now, catalysts, you learned what a catalyst was in chemistry. Catalysts are things that are going to decrease the amount of activation energy you need to actually start a chemical reaction. And catalysts can be a lot of different things in chemistry, but when it comes to the human body, we call these catalysts enzymes. They're considered biological catalysts, and they're mainly made up of proteins. Now, when we get into biochemistry, we're going to be focusing mainly on organic compounds. And organic compounds are compounds that have carbon and hydrogen and are covalently bonded, which means that they're sharing their electrons. In regular chemistry, you guys studied mainly inorganic compounds, and those are compounds that don't contain carbon, and you can see in parentheses most of the time carbon dioxide is an exception to this rule. It has carbon, but it doesn't also have that hydrogen, so it doesn't make it an organic compound. Now, the properties of water are very important because the human body is mainly made up of water, and all of our chemical reactions happen underwater. So because of this, the properties of water are very, very important to maintaining homeostasis. The first property of water is having a high heat capacity, which means it can absorb or release large amounts of heat before changing temperature. And that's really important. We don't want our cells to freeze or our cells to boil, or else they wouldn't be able to do what they're supposed to do. High heat of vaporization is a very important property where it's changing the liquid form of water to gas, but it takes with it a large amount of heat, which is important because that is how we cool our bodies down via sweating. Also, water is considered to be polar, and polar is in science is where we have a substance that has a positive and a negative charge on either end. And because water is polar, it is the universal solvent, meaning that it is able to dissolve lots of different substances, especially if they are ionically bonded. Because an ionic compound is produced by 2 ions, which are charged atoms when they transfer their electrons. And because of that, they're able to attract that positive and negative side and pull them apart fairly easily. Water is also reactive, and as I said before, we need all of our chemical reactions to happen underwater, so this is a very important property for us to maintain homeostasis. And there are some terms here that maybe or maybe you have or have not heard in the past, but so hydrolysis is equal to catabolism, which I mentioned before. I'm going to explain this more in class. And also dehydration synthesis is the same as anabolism. So I'm going to explain these two different types of reactions to you next time in class, so it will make a little bit more sense. And then also water cushions. And so we actually have it around our body organs in between the visceral and the parietal serous membranes. Now, salts are inorganic compounds, but they're very important to the human body because they are considered to be electrolytes. And you've probably heard of electrolytes. When you drink a sports drink, you get the electrolytes back. We need these electrolytes for a lot of our different chemical reactions, and we also need them to conduct electrical currents throughout the body. Now, this next concept we are going to be performing an entire lab about, and it's about buffers. And buffers are compounds that are going to help our body maintain homeostasis by making sure that the pH of our body, whether it's in our blood, cells, whatever, doesn't fluctuate too much. And the buffer system in our body that is the most important is called the carbonic acid bicarbonate system. And I'm going to actually give you the chemical reaction for this in class, and then we will perform a lab that is going to make more sense of this concept.